Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today marks the end of an era, in a way. This is our final deep dive for season 3 of the Schaeffer Dialogues. We spent this season really getting into Francis Schaeffer's book, He is There and He is Not Silent.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Absolutely. In our last session, we wrestled with chapter 3, remember, the really profound problem of knowledge. What if God is there but just silent? It paints a pretty bleak picture, that absolute agony Schaeffer talks about.
It really does. And today, we push right into the next step, chapter 4. It's titled The Epistemological Necessity, the Answer. And Schaeffer makes, a really powerful claim here. He argues that a biblical worldview doesn't just, offer an answer to these huge philosophical problems, especially the ones about knowing that really plague modern thought, secular thought, even some liberal Christian thinking. No, he says it actually resolves them.
Resolves them, as in the problem just disappears.
Pretty much. He argues that within the actual Christian framework, these dilemmas, these agonies about knowledge, they don't even really come up.
Okay, that is a bold claim.
Yeah.
So how does he build that case? Because we're about to unpack some connections that might surprise you. Links between language, how modern science even got started, and, how we know anything, even ourselves or other people.
Exactly. It really hinges on where you start, your fundamental assumptions about how reality works, your presuppositions.
Schaeffer actually takes us way back to the High Renaissance. You think about those big thinkers then. They had this huge intellectual problem.
Yeah.
How do you actually bring together nature? The physical world, science, reason, and grace, the spiritual side. God, revelation.
Right. Their way of thinking, the rationalism, the humanism, it just didn't give them a way to connect the two meaningfully. It was like two separate worlds. And you can still see the ripples of that today, can't you? That split between faith and reason.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But then Schaeffer contrasts that with the Reformation.
Yeah, and this is fascinating. He says they simply didn't have that nature and grace problem. Not because they figured out some clever solution, but because their starting point, the historic Christian view, fully embraced verbal propositional revelation.
Okay, let's pause there. What does that mean in simple terms?
It means they believed God actually communicated specific, understandable truths, like sentences, clear statements, propositions in human language. So because God's spoken word covered both nature and grace, the physical and the spiritual, there was no fundamental split. It was unified from the get-go.
So language is the key here.
Yeah.
That unity depends on God actually speaking. And it's interesting, you look at modern philosophy, people like the later Heidegger or Wittgenstein doing linguistic analysis.
Right.
They also seem to land on this idea that for us to know anything, something has to be spoken. Language is essential.
Exactly. They saw the need for language, the structure it provides, but, and here's the critical point Schaeffer makes, they realized language was necessary, but they had, no one there to speak.
So I'll leave you with a big question.
A huge one. Are we just finite beings kind of scrabbling around collecting facts and trying to build our own big picture, our own universals? Are we just making it all up? Or is there actually someone, a speaker, out there providing the real foundation, the real meaning? Is knowledge something we invent or something we discover?
And for the Reformation, for the whole Judeo-Christian tradition, the answer is clear. There is someone there. God speaks. And that changes absolutely everything about how you approach knowledge.
It really does. Which then leads to the next logical question, especially for modern ears. Is that even, intellectually credible today? Can you hold on to this idea of a God who speaks specific propositions and still be intellectually honest?
And Schaeffer tackles that head on. He says, look, it's not possible. If you start with the presupposition of what he calls the uniformity of natural causes in a closed system.
Right. The idea that the universe is just a big machine, basically. Everything happens inside the box, no outside input, no miracles, no God intervening or speaking. It's all self-contained.
So if that's your non-negotiable starting point, then the idea of God revealing something, speaking into that system.
It becomes, as Schaeffer puts it, absolute nonsense. It just doesn't compute within that framework. It's conceptually impossible.
And this isn't just a minor disagreement, is it? It's about your foundational grid for reality.
Totally. Your starting axioms. If you assume that closed system philosophically or theologically, then, propositional knowledge from God is unthinkable. And Schaeffer argues that view ultimately leads to, the dehumanization of man because it contradicts what we intuitively know about ourselves, about consciousness, meaning, morality, things that don't fit neatly into a purely mechanical box.
So Schaeffer pushes back. He says this idea of a totally closed system, this monolithic consensus, actually goes against the evidence, against what we experience as human beings. And he offers the alternative, the uniformity of natural causes in a limited system, open to reordering by God and by man.
Exactly, an open system. And crucially, he argues this was the philosophical soil where modern science actually grew.
That's a really significant historical point, that science needed that open view to even get going.
It did. The Christian starting point is an infinite personal God who is there, who created everything, including us, in his image. And part of that image is being a verbalizer. We use language.
Right. We communicate complex ideas, propositions, all the time between ourselves.
Yeah, so if we do that horizontally, why would it be unthinkable for the God who made us like himself to communicate vertically, propositionally to us? Within the Christian structure, it's actually what you'd expect. It makes perfect sense.
Okay, so going back to our last deep dive, we talked about that absolute agony, that darkness modern people feel about knowing anything for sure. Epistemology.
Yeah, that struggle. But here's where Schaeffer makes that really radical claim we mentioned earlier. He says, for the Christian, just like there's no fundamental nature-grace problem, there's also no fundamental epistemology problem.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
Not just an answer, but no problem.
Correct. It's not that Christians just happen to find a solution. It's that the problem itself dissolves within the Christian framework. The very foundation, an infinite personal God who is there and is not silent, prevents that agony, that uncertainty from taking root.
Why? What's the basis for that stability? How does he connect that to, say, science again?
Well, he points again to the birth of modern science. Thinkers like Oppenheimer, Whitehead, they noted this. Science as we know it really needed that Christian milieu. Why? Because people like Galileo, Copernicus, Newton, Faraday...
The giants.
Right. They believed the universe was made by a reasonable God. And because God is reasonable and ordered, his creation must be too. Therefore, it could be understood by human reason, because God made our reason to correspond to that reality.
Whereas the ancient Greeks, for instance, had a lot of the same facts, but didn't develop modern science in the same way.
Exactly. They lacked that foundational confidence in a consistent, rational creator underpinning everything. They didn't have the same reason to expect the universe to be reliably understandable.
And Schaeffer even warns, doesn't he, that if science loses that foundation, that certainty in an objective, knowable reality.
Yes. He fears it'll just become, technology tinkering, or worse, what he calls sociological manipulation, where science serves an agenda rather than pursuing objective truth. He mentions Carl Sagan, suggesting sometimes the line blurred between science and science fiction because the underlying assumption was a closed, ultimately meaningless system.
So it all comes back to epistemology, to knowing, because God made things to correlate, to fit together.
Right. The early scientists had the courage, the boldness to expect to find explanations. It wasn't a leap of faith in the dark. It was based on their understanding of God. God made the universe, he made us to live in it, and he gave us his word, the Bible, to tell us about himself and his creation. Why wouldn't there be a unity, a coherence between all those things?
So how does this reframe the whole subject-object thing? Us, the knowers, and the world, the known.
Well, the Christian position starts by assuming there is a valid reason for a connection, a correlation, between the subject, us, and the object, the world. Our minds are made to know the world because the same God made both. And this isn't just theory, it matches our experience, doesn't it?
How so?
Everyone lives as if there's a real, predictable world out there. No matter what philosophy they hold, they don't try to walk through walls. They act as though the world is objectively real and that their senses give them true, even if not exhaustive, information about it.
That's a powerful point. People might deny objective morality, but still feel outrage at injustice. They deny objective love, but fall deeply in love. Our actions constantly betray a belief in things our philosophies might reject. We live as if the Christian view of a real, knowable world is true.
Exactly. We act that way because, according to the Christian view, that's how reality is. God made us and the world in the same frame of reference. That's why we can genuinely know things, know other creatures, know the world, not just manipulate them, but truly understand them to a degree, because the same reasonable God stands behind it all.
Okay, so we can know things truly, but what about accuracy, especially with something as slippery as language? Semantics, communication?
Ah, yes. Language. Schaeffer looks at basically three views. Two extremes and a middle ground. One extreme says our backgrounds, our experiences are so different that our words are hopelessly private. Real communication is impossible.
That sounds isolating.
It is. The other extreme says every word has some kind of absolute exhaustive meaning that everyone shares perfectly.
Which also sounds unrealistic.
Right. Schaeffer argues for the middle. He says, yes, our backgrounds give words unique shades of meaning for each of us, but there's enough overlapping meaning grounded in our shared world and shared human nature that allows for genuine, true communication. Not exhaustive, but true.
He uses that tea example, doesn't he?
He does. It's great. His wife's experience of tea from China, packed in rice, very specific, unique memories. His own childhood memory involves an aluminum tea caddy. Totally different associations. Yet if he asks her for a pot of tea,
He gets tea.
he gets tea. Because there's enough shared understanding of the core concept. We don't need exhaustive knowledge to know truly. Only God knows everything exhaustively. We're finite. We know truly but partially. And that makes perfect sense within a Christian framework where God communicates understandably but doesn't tell us everything all at once.
Okay, so this Christian view of epistemology, grounded in a God who speaks, isn't just intellectually stable. It brings practical results, freedoms.
Exactly. Schaeffer outlines 3 big ones. 3 areas where the Christian has a freedom and certainty that modern thought often lacks.
What's the first one?
The first is looking outward. It's that subject-object relationship we just talked about. Knowing the external world. The Christian starts with certainty. There is an external, objective reality, and God made it. It's not an illusion. It's not chaos.
Unlike, say, positivism, which struggles for a starting point, or some Eastern views where objective reality is less certain.
Precisely. The Christian has a basis for expecting to know truly. And because a reasonable God made both the world and our minds, it's not surprising that our minds have, you could say, categories that actually fit the reality we live in.
Like our lungs fit the atmosphere.
Perfect analogy. Our minds are designed for this world, and the Bible confirms this both through direct statements, propositional truth, and by showing God's consistent actions in history and nature. 2 ways of knowing, always agreeing.
And this is where the danger to science comes in again, if that objective base is lost.
Yes. Without it, science risks becoming just a game, or driven by sociology, manipulating data. Losing objectivity, Schaeffer says, is as serious for a scientist as losing the reality-fantasy distinction is for someone struggling with drugs. But the Christian, like the early scientists, has a solid reason to expect to touch the real.
Okay, second freedom.
The second is about knowing other people, getting past the facade, the outward appearance, to the real person inside. Modern thought often despairs here. How can we really know someone else?
But if everything fits under God,
Then knowing people must fit too. The Bible speaks to both our outward actions and our inner life. The Christian has a starting point for understanding anyone, even a non-Christian, because they know that person, fundamentally, is made in the image of God.
that story about the humanist intellectual who came to Schaeffer.
Yes, brilliant man, but in tears because humanism offered no ultimate meaning. And Schaeffer's starting point was simply, I know who you are made in the image of God. That provides a basis for real understanding, real connection. And between Christians, as they grow closer to God's norms inwardly and outwardly, there can be an even deeper, more integrated knowing of one another.
Less pretending, more authenticity.
Exactly. Okay, the third freedom.
The third freedom.
It's navigating reality and imagination, distinguishing what's real from what's fantasy. Modern culture often blurs this line, right? Leading to confusion, anxiety. But the Christian, knowing that God is the ultimate creator and that there is an objective reality he made. That Christian is free to have a powerful creative imagination without being destabilized by it. Because we're made in God's image, the creator's image, we too can be creative.
We can imagine, create art, tell stories.
Go beyond the stars in our minds, shape things. But we always have that anchor in objective reality created by God. We know the difference between the world we imagine and the world that is.
So, counterintuitively perhaps, the person with the firmest grasp on objective reality should be the most free to be wildly imaginative and creative.
That's Schaeffer's point. The Christian should have the flaming imagination grounded in the confidence that they know what's real.
So bringing it all together, Schaeffer sees modern alienation, that black horror, manifesting in these 3 areas.
Precisely. The struggle with the subject-object relationship, is the world really there? The difficulty knowing other people genuinely, the confusion between reality and fantasy. These are symptoms, he argues, of a deeper problem: humanity's attempt at autonomy, revolting against God, trying to be our own source of meaning and truth. It leads to fragmentation. The cry of "Who am I?" rings out because without God, there are no universals to hold the particulars of life together, no ultimate reference point.
But the Christian view offers healing for that alienation.
Complete healing. When our knowledge finds its proper place, when it fits under the apex of the infinite, personal, triune God who is there and who is not silent, then Schaeffer insists there simply is no problem in epistemology. It offers coherence, stability, truth, and yes, even beauty, a beautiful, integrated way of knowing and living.
Wow. What a way to conclude our journey through He is there and He's not silent. Chapter 4 really does tie so many threads together. It's been quite the season.
It certainly has, a deep dive indeed. And while Season 3 of the Schaeffer Dialogues is wrapping up, we're actually really excited for what's next.
Yes. Season 4 is on the horizon.
Indeed. We'll be diving into another foundational work by Francis Schaeffer, Genesis in Space and Time. We'll be exploring the significance of those early chapters of Genesis for history, science, and theology.
That sounds fascinating. We really hope these deep dives have been valuable, giving you that shortcut to being well-informed. And if you want to take these conversations further, maybe dialogue about these ideas more, we definitely encourage you to check out Joseph R. Miller's website. It's morethancake.org.
That's morethancake.org.